was doing a scene. The scene was opposite Harley Quinn, and they said, "Just do it again, but this time less flirty. You're still 9." And I was like, "But I'm opposite Tara Strong. Like, what do you want from me?"
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Behind the Voice. I'm joined by the lovely Darcy Rose Byrnes. Thank you so much for being here. She plays Poison Ivy in Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. How are you doing? How has your 2024 been like so far?
My 2024 is off to a really good start. I'm glad I can finally talk about the game, doing a bunch of different projects and just having fun. Yeah, it's good. Thank you for asking.
Absolutely. I know that you do so much of work and you already are so talented. And I got to know that you've been doing performing in general since the age of 3. So what was it
Yes.
like since then? Do you remember any of those extremely early moments of acting and performing in general?
I do remember quite a bit. I know, my first audition actually was in the womb. Didn't get it. I was too old. I was
Damn it.
supposed to be I was supposed to be a 10-week fetus for a love interest for a 14-week fetus boy. And, I was 11 weeks. The woman's always too old. Welcome to Hollywood. But so that was my first audition. I started working when I was 9 months old. I wouldn't say I started acting until I was probably 3. Because at that point I was just smiling at whoever would look at me long enough. When I was 3, when did it start? Singing Babies was the first thing I did, which was nice and creepy. That was when I was a baby, 9 months. Where they would animate our mouths moving and we would sit there and sing and Letterman threw our VHS out the window. So that was cool. And then when I was 3, I don't remember what the first official thing was when I was 3. I know I started, besides the commercials and stuff that I was already doing with theater. I remember I was Sandy in Annie. I did Annie 3 times, Sandy, Molly, and Annie. I have Annie PTSD. Young and the Restless was, I think, when I was 4, almost 5. So I kind of right from the beginning started working with people that were very good to learn from. On the soaps, you get the script the night before and you shoot the entire episode in one day, and the next day it's the second episode, and you just keep going like that. And it's very fast paced, and I definitely got thrown into the fire as far as my introduction to television, to TV shows. And I think I carried that training with me throughout my career. I'm definitely get the job done, get it quick, and get it right on the first take, because you're not going to get a second take kind of performer.
Yeah, that's true. Wow, it's insane. Like you got into the acting and the thing that you got into was soaps and they shoot every single day. Every single day is in one episode. So it's like it's just going. So it's insane that you learned from that. That's crazy.
And Bold and the Beautiful, I was on Bold and the Beautiful as well, because they had my mom on the show go over. And so my character kind of went back and forth. And on Bold and the Beautiful, that was a half an hour soap. So they would sometimes do multiple episodes a day. And I remember days where I was filming both Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful in the same day, because it was the same lot.
Wow.
So we were going back and forth. And yeah, it was crazy, but I loved every second of it.
Well, so now, I feel like your mindset from that time onwards is like a set of like working hard every single day, and this is how it's gonna be. This is how my life is gonna be. It was like growing up from there. Was that how it kind of turned out to be? Where you're like, okay, I'm gonna focus on these things. I'm gonna make sure that I do everything in the best way possible. Was that kind of the mindset that went onwards from there?
You mean like as far as the work ethic, like how that translated? Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was working with incredibly talented people. Like I never, besides some improv classes when I was really, really little, I didn't actually do any formal training until I was older, when I went to Broad to study Shakespeare. And so my training as an actor was on set working with people. And it was 5 years on the Young and Restless. It was Desperate Housewives. It was all the guest stars that I did over the years, like Cold Case and Private Practice. And so I was constantly learning by watching these incredible actors, and not just watching them but actually getting to work with them. And that definitely, that I love learning on the job. I think it was the most fun for me, and I think I probably would have been bored had I tried to, do it a slower way.
That's amazing. That's lovely. And it's even crazy that you are an actor, you're also a singer, you're also a dancer, you've also done, as you mentioned, improv. You've done so much. How like that this passion for all of these things that you whatever you're interested in, you're just gonna get there and do it. I love that fact about you that you just go for it because a lot of people don't, including myself. I'm trying to get there, but like a lot of people don't. So I just love the fact that you decided to, you know what, I like that. I'm gonna try that and see how it goes. That's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that comes from my dad. My dad always said it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. And as far as I think a great example of that is Big Shot.
Yeah.
I had written a song. It all ended up. I've told the story so many times, but I'll always tell it. But we were talking about the potential love story between Mouse and Harper being myself. And John Stamos asked if they were going to go for it because it wasn't really set in stone at that point in the
Mhm.
script because this was still just episode 3 that we were filming, which was my first episode in the show. Um, and Dean Lorry had kind of, an answer to kind of ignore it because he didn't want to actually address that yet with the actors right there. And he said, I want them to play ukes together because he'd seen me and my co-star Tisha Custodio like playing ukes.
Mm.
Um, and so I kind of took that as my opportunity. And I said, I think Mouse should write a song for me. And he made a joke that a song written by Mouse would be 3 lines and only facts. And so I said, well, in that case, and I sang him one of my songs, and John Stamos tried to buy it on the spot. Now, that was mostly joking in jest, I think. But that was kind of the crack of the open door. And I went home and I wrote a song called Everything to Me, which was
Yeah.
the 3 lines and only facts song. And I pitched it to the show. And apparently, I pitched it wrong. I should have been pitching it to the music supervisor. I pitched it to the series creator because I didn't know that's how it goes.
Mm.
But they said yes to the song, and they asked me to write the Shakespeare musical that they hadn't written yet. So I kind of just, again, forgiveness, permission. I just kind of went, "Hey, I think this is a good idea. What do you think?" And they went for it. And
That's cool.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
amazing. I love the fact that you were so much involved in that and just like it just blew off the roof. It was so good and you were so awesome. And so I just love that part. It's really cool. And like I've seen your a lot of songs that you write and that you've written and then that you also made videos on it on your own YouTube channel as well. It's so cool. Do you like watching musicals as well? Is that something that you're into at the same time, or it's just songs
Oh yeah.
just like, oh, that's cool. What is that? Do you remember
No,
any recent musicals that you've watched?
Oh, I haven't gotten to New York in the last couple of years to see anything on Broadway, but
Hmm.
as far as musical soundtracks, I mean, I always love Heather's. Come From Away when they recorded it blew me away.
Wow.
I saw Matilda on the West End a while ago, and I thought the movie adaptation was spectacular. But I'll always love me some Sondheim, Into the Woods. I've seen Wicked 11 times, I think.
Wow.
Um, Fantastics is a goal of mine to do. Um, yeah, I grew up doing musicals. Yeah, the entire time I was on Young the Restless and The Bold and Beautiful and all those guest stars and stuff, I was constantly doing theater as well. So I've done, The Sound of Music and Music Man and Annie and Into the Woods, actually, Godspell. So I grew up doing theater, and that's always been something that's part of my heart, and I'm always called out for my pop music sounds rather musical theatery. I guess there's some songs on the new album that hasn't come out yet that kind of could just be plopped right into a musical. The most recent one I did was Hair. I did a
Oh,
pitch with
wow.
Kenny Ortega for to turn Hair the musical into a movie, and that was incredible. I loved it so much.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah, just I've not watched a lot of musicals and I've like very probably one or two movies into musicals. I'm like, wow, I really need to stretch out and watch more. Because I know a few of my friends who are like into musicals a lot and they're like, recommending me all these movies. I'm like, I've not watched it. And they're like, you have not watched this? Or I'm like, so like I have to get there. But I just love your singing is amazing and you have a great
Oh, thank you.
voice. So by the time when you started acting, you also were singing. Was there a point in time where you were like, okay, maybe singing can be taken as a career, or was that something that you just enjoyed doing alongside with acting?
I never saw them as being separate. Growing up, and sometimes to this day, people will ask, well, maybe not so much now, because I think I've started to, blend the disciplines more obviously. But growing up, people would be like, okay, so if you had to pick like singing or acting or dancing, like if you had to pick, and I
Yeah.
would be like, yes. And they're like, no, 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 but if you had to pick, and I'm like, yeah, yes, the answer is yes. Like I'm not going to play this game. No, I'm not picking one or the other. Especially growing up doing theater, they were always completely tied together.
Mhm.
um that was, and that was kind of growing up to like the musical stuff. That was the fun stuff. That was my social life, was all of the friends I was making doing the different shows, because it was usually the same troupe of actors.
Yeah.
So it was always together, So by the time I was singing on Sophia the First and then writing songs for Big Shot, it was just like, yeah, did you not see this coming? Because I did. Like it just never occurred to me that they would be separate.
Hmm. That's interesting. And yeah, I know a lot of people like actors wear different hats and they love doing like
Mhm.
singing and even dancing and lots of different stuff. And so it's cool. Like it all merges together. It's such a great way. And I love that fact about uh, acting and all of this in general. But you have delved into voice acting, and from voice acting came your recent role as Poison Ivy in Marvel and Suicide Squad. How
Yeah,
all that happened? Like, how did you get to be playing a role in this game?
that is a good question. I mean, the short answer is I auditioned and I got the job. That's the short answer. There wasn't anything particularly odd about the audition story. I got the audition and I put it in, and they're like, yeah, you got it. And then they told me more about it when I got there for the record, because they're
Hmm.
like, do you know what you're doing? And I'm like, I kind of know. And they're like, but do you know? And I'm like, probably not. Tell me what it is. I don't know. And then they filled me in. But this was the first time that I was doing a voiceover character, I guess any character, to be fair, that had a history with fan bases built in.
Hmm.
You know, Obviously, when I was Icky, I was coming into the Avatar universe, so that's going to be cool because the universe
Yeah.
is known. But Icky was not. Icky was a new character. And then with Sophia the First, like I could tell in my heart, and just you can feel it sometimes that it was going to be special. But again, it was a new character, so you never really know. Like you're doing it. I think we recorded Sophia the First a year in advance of it coming out, I think.
Wow.
In the beginning, I think, don't quote me. So there's a good deal of time where you're basically living in this universe that nobody else knows about. Um, and you're like, this is really cool, but
Mhm.
we'll see if anyone else thinks the same thing. But and the same thing with Maricela and Spirit Riding Free. But it Ivy, Poison Ivy was the first one that I was going into it going that there's this history and there's this mystique attached to this character
Yeah.
that I'm stepping into, as opposed to like the mystique of Princess Amber that I helped create.
Hmm.
So that was an interesting experience, especially because I couldn't talk about it because
Yeah.
Ivy died in the last game. So no one was supposed to know that she was alive. So I was recording from 2019 until now still. And, I could not
Yeah.
tell anybody that I was this character that people loved. It was kind of wild.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how it kind of linked. And you mentioned like, but did you get to know about like the games that this series already had? Like there was the Batman Arkham games that came before this. Did you know about those? Did you know about games in general before this?
I knew a little bit. I didn't know too much. I didn't come at it like I wasn't watching as the games came out. I'm not a very good person with keeping up with the games as they come out. But when I got it, I made sure to go back and like kind of watch Poison Ivy's storyline and see what happened. But kind of part of the fun, it was this weird thing of I'm one of those actors who I like to do the research not extensive research, but like I like to know what I'm coming into.
Mhm.
But with Ivy not really remembering anything, it kind of was okay if I didn't myself remember everything. So I was kind of doing this weird balance of like I, the actor, want to know what's going on. So if I'm supposed to say something that has a double meaning, I have to know what that means. But at the same time, I don't really need to know too much. So I kind of like piecemealed my education, in between records.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense because this is she is kind of getting not resurrected, but kind of reborn, and she has no idea what's going on. And
Yeah.
like, but she has that feeling like there's might be a connection, but I have no idea who you are. There's something there. So I like that part. And I actually did not expect that Poison Ivy is going to be a child. I expected Poison Ivy to be like the grown adult that I've known. So it was really,
Yeah.
really interesting to see that that's happening, and the thing that I got to see in the game. Did you get to see the cutscenes that Poison Ivy eventually had in the game? Did you get to see everything that the game had to show, like had to like graphics and everything? Did you get to see your scenes?
I saw some things while we were recording. I've seen things now that the game has come out.
Mm-hmm.
But when we were recording, they would well, obviously when you do ADR, you get to see the animation, however finished it is at that point, you get to see it.
Yeah.
And then every once in a while they would be like, "Oh, hold on. We've ended 10 minutes early. Let's just pull up the scene for her. Let's show her." And so I get to see like little snippets here and there.
Wow.
Um, but for most of it I saw with everybody else. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I really liked I really liked the whole moment and the whole scene. It's pretty cool. And you mentioned that you started from 2019 till
Mhm.
now. Like obviously at that time there was also pandemic and all that. What was
Yes.
the process like when you started out working on this project? How would be a day in a life for you when you were working with this game?
Well, that would change. So when we first started, I actually checked my calendar, and when I first started recording the video game was right in the middle of Hollywood Fringe, and I was doing six different theater shows.
Wow.
And smack dab in the middle was Poison Ivy. And then I record for a video game that I still don't know if that's come out or what it is. Very odd. I love it. I love it. Yeah, so right smack dab in the middle was this game. And then that was kind of the norm for a while, was just going to Warner Brothers and recording in their studios. And then the pandemic hit, and we kind of saw the writing on the wall a little bit. And by we, I mean my mother saw the writing on the wall. And we had a contact who had a contact who was selling a whisper room, a voiceover booth.
Mhm.
And it was, I think, 2 weeks into lockdown over here, which was March something. March 13th was, I think, the first, because it was Friday the 13th. I remember was when we got shut down from Big Shot. So about then. And we called the contact, and Debbie Derryberry, actually, another wonderful voiceover actor. And we said, "Hey, is your friend still selling the booth?" She's like, "I don't know, but I'll check." And it turned out that she was. And the last time we had talked about the booth was in 2018, I think, or 2017, 2018.
Wow.
So this was like a year, 2 years later. And the booth was still available, but there was two other people who wanted to buy it. And if they couldn't get it, then we would be able to get it. But again, we would have to get it. We would have
Mhm.
to find a way to get this 5x5 whisper room out of her garage and into our house. And it was kind of insane. And but we, had a old neighbor who was a contractor, and we were like, "Hey, we need help. Is this something you can do?" And he was like, "Yeah." And watching YouTube videos online about how to take it apart and put it back together, he was living it. He was loving it. And we got it here. We put it back up. I had a producer's call the next day for voiceover.
Wow.
I think we had one of the windows on backwards. Um, like I remember I was doing an interview for Big Shot, and I locked the door from the inside,
Oh
and I
no.
couldn't get back into the booth, and we had to take the door off the hinges. I
Oh.
mean, it was just a whole thing. But that meant that I could record at home, because we knew that was gonna be coming down the pike. If
Yeah.
this game wanted to continue, we're gonna have to record from home. And we ended up being able to do a setup that Warner Brothers was happy with, which was kind of like a phew.
Mhm.
Um, and then the side benefit of that was I ended up having to record my demos for Big Shot here myself and mix them and everything because I couldn't go anywhere and
Mm.
record anywhere else. And I've recorded my whole album from this booth. Um,
Wow.
but yeah, so it was odd. I do not mind going back into the studio though, because being my own engineer when I'm trying to scream as Ivy is not the most fun. Um, Trying
Yeah.
to, kind of ride the dial on my own recording, especially because like I'm recording in front of my mic and then my Scarlett is down there. It's a
Okay.
work in progress. It's a
Yeah,
work in progress.
I can understand that. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It must be super hard to like figure all like not figure like to do all of this by yourself. So it's crazy how it's crazy to me how you guys were able to figure it out during the pandemic and make it work, and it works so flawlessly. Um,
I wouldn't say flawlessly, but
I mean, yeah, once you started saying like you had to, take out your door and everything, I'm like, wow,
yeah.
that was fun. I guess.
Yeah, but the worst part was when we were trying to get the door back on the hinges. So one of my best friends, Ambrit Millhouse, she's also an actor, but she's also our resident. Ambrit, how do we fix it? Because she just knows how to fix things and just really good at it. So this was a little bit later, and we were trying to get the door back on. We're all wearing masks, and we're the door is heavy because this whole thing is like a monster, and we're trying to raise the door and scooch it over and then put it back onto the hinges.
Mhm.
And now we finally align it. The bolts are finally lined into the holes or whatever they're called, and it won't go down and it just won't lower. And it's at this point that Ambert realizes that we still left the books underneath it that we had used to raise up the door. And we were for like 5 minutes trying to get this thing down, and we're like, it won't budge. It's like, well, maybe because Dialogues of Plato was underneath it, you weirdo. Like we couldn't. You're like, oh my gosh.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was you had a fun time doing this.
Oh, sure. It was fun. It was fun 5 minutes before the interview when I couldn't get into my interview and I could see the Zoom screen inside, like being like, so and so is ready for the interview. It's like, I can't.
So we had 5 more minutes. It will be fixed. Hopefully.
Yeah, just stick my face up against the glass and do the interview from there. Hello.
Uh,
Yeah.
wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. But do you remember, like, do you get these? I don't know if you at this point have this, but do you have like a feeling of nervousness, or you're ever anxious if you get to start a new project, whatever it may be, whether it's voiceover, whether it's any role that you get into?
Mm. I don't know. I don't think I tend to get nervous per se. There might be a little bit of a like on a first day if it's with a new crew, it's like, okay, let's see how this goes. When it's a new chemistry with new people, but it's never nerves really. Um, yeah, I think it's more just excitement. Like I'm ready to you might be unsure because again, if it's a new project, it's like, okay, how is this process gonna be?
Yeah.
But it's never like, oh, I'm nervous to oh gosh, what if that doesn't really I kind of feel like if I got this far that I got the job, I'm good. Like
Hmm.
we'll
Yeah.
we'll figure it out. Um that was something that I think leaned into even more on season 2 for Big Shot because I had already worked with them for an entire season
Mhm.
um, during a pandemic. So I think when it came to season 2, I was just kind of a lot looser with I would improv a little bit more and stuff because I just knew that they knew me and that they trusted me and they trusted that I respected the material. So if I was trying something, I would do it the way it was written the next take. And if they didn't like it, they tell me, and I was with actors who really were ready to play. Like Stamos was always ready to play. So I think, when you know people, it's easier to kind of relax into a rhythm, but that doesn't mean there isn't a rhythm to start with, I guess.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's pretty cool because especially from someone like me who is like, if anything new comes in and there's all those things like, what if you're not able to do this
Mm.
and all that stuff. So it's like always those kind of things comes up. And so I'm always curious about when anybody who's in the creative field, who what they think of it and how they process it. And maybe their mindset is something that I need to take in. So, and I know a lot of people out there who have the similar kind of thing of where they're scared to even take the step. And so it's important to have that kind of mindset to start with and to not think about the negative side of thing of what if the bad thing could happen, instead of maybe you should be
Sure.
thinking of what if the good thing that can happen. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I think especially if you already got the role, you got it for the reason,
yeah.
like you're there because they like something that you did. And especially, with theater, a lot of that play comes in rehearsals, but with film, like if we're not actually working on film, like,
Hmm.
so if they don't like it, just do another take.
Yeah.
Like it's really, as long as you're not, flubbing 14 takes in a row and, pushing lunch and stuff, like, have some fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I think I've been fortunate too that I've worked with people who are very, creative and stuff. And so there doesn't really feel a need to be nervous more. And I think that might also come from coming up on the soaps too. It's like I don't
Yeah.
have time to second guess anything. Like you make your choice. If they don't like it, they'll tell you.
Mhm.
That's it. Move on. Like I think that just kind of I'm trying to remember. I think the time that I spent the most on something, like trying to figure out what's the best way to do it is probably the weirdest thing that you'd imagine. It was Big Shot. I was doing a scene where I was mad at my girlfriend and I slammed the door open and left. And it was in the cafeteria, so I had a tray.
Mhm.
And I slammed the door open like with my backside, like, behind and then leave. And then after rehearsal, I we were done with rehearsal. It's like, okay, great, mark it, let's move on. And I'm still standing there, just hitting my butt against the door handle repeatedly. And then Ron Underwood, who was the director of that episode, came up to me. He's like, "Are you trying to figure out?" I'm like, "Yes, I am." Because I was trying to figure out if it was funnier for me to hit the door with my butt on the line or after the line. And so I was doing this on my own. And then Ron Underwood just kind of like, sidled up and he's like, "All right, let's see it." And then we just like figured out, train my hands, what's funnier back and forth. And then when I went to, props, I was like, "Hey, so she's like, "No, I know it has to be glued down so it won't go anywhere when you push the door." I'm like, "You're awesome." Like we were just ready to play. That was probably like the most that I've taken, I think, to figure something out. And it was a very technical thing. I was just like, what's funnier?
Yeah.
Like trying to figure out the timing of like, how does this work the best?
That's great. That's lovely. That's amazing. uh, but
Butt
yes,
acting.
yeah. But yeah, it's so incredible to have you in this game as well. But were you a fan, or are you a fan of any comic book, or maybe DC, Marvel, superheroes, anything like that?
I am. Yeah, I have I think you'd call it a tin poster
Hmm.
on my wall of Superman that I got when I was like a teenager when I was watching Lois and Clark.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, so I kind of forgot that that was there until I was doing a little, press video for Poison Ivy, and I was like, wait, never meet your hero, never kill your heroes. Oh wait, it's on my wall. It's always has been. I kind of forgot that. Like I made a little
Yeah.
Palmer Clay superhero, Superman charm and stuff. Um, but I learned to read. Well, I didn't learn to read. I learned to like reading
Mhm.
from comic books,
Wow.
specifically Sabrina the Teenage Witch comic books. Like I was never interested really in reading before that. And my dad brought home Sabrina the Teenage Witch comic books. I'm like, oh, okay, reading can be fun. I got it now. Um, so yeah, I love anything fantasy and superhero and magic and all of that.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm it's unfortunate. I feel like this is bad for me that I never got much into reading, and I'm like more
Mhm.
into watching and experiencing in that way. I could never
Yeah.
get, but I did read a little bit of comic books, but again, not so much. I think in here where I'm from, there was not a lot of, or maybe I was stupid and I didn't get the right way. And I didn't get to read a lot of comic books, but I did get to watch a lot of obviously the superhero side of things. So
Sure.
the Marvel
Yeah.
stuff and the DC stuff. So all the animated shows, which I really adore and love, and I tell everybody like, "You have not watched this, go watch this," and so those things happen all the time. So yeah, that's where my love for the DC side of things came in, and which I also didn't even know about Suicide Squad till the movie dropped, and I was like, there were comics and all that stuff. So I have no idea about most of the things, but I get to know them from the movies and shows if there are any. So that's how I got my introduction.
I love me a good TV show. I have binged far too many. So many TV shows have been binged during the pandemic.
Yes.
So many.
That's
Yeah.
the usual. That's, I think everybody has had to have this anyway. It's like the pandemic hit. Everybody's like, what are we going to do? And then eventually it's like, okay, I'm gonna watch 10 shows in this month.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I've binged a lot of shows. At that time, do you had any like kind of like favorite show? I know it's very hard to pick, but is there a show that you remembered the most or had the most fun watching the season or however it was?
Like during the pandemic
Yeah.
or just in general.
I mean, I think in general it's going to be way too long of a list, and you have to pick from
That's
there.
true. That's true. Well, I mean, during the pandemic, I remember I watched all of I watched The Practice because I was working on Big Shot, with David E. Kelly. Let's see. I remember this is not during the pandemic, but I remember I watched all of Prison Break, and I was both myself and my mother were so obsessed with the show that we actually kept binging it when I was in school in London. Like in my defense, it was like, really, really long school days, and I would come home and my ankles were like shot, and we're like, just have boba and sushi and watch, Prison Break. Sherlock, I've watched Newsroom. I think I watched Newsroom 2 or 3 times over during the pandemic, having already binged it a couple times prior to that. I'm obsessed with anything Sherlock. Watched all of Smallville. There you
Oh
go, some
wow.
superheroes. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was my most recent binge, and currently making my way through the last season of Suits because I kind of like anything to do with law, any TV
Mm.
show. I kind of went weird and signed up for some law classes like for free just for fun while watching Suits. I'm like, I don't have enough to do. I'm gonna go study contract law. So binged all of that. I love. Oh, and then I went backwards too, and I haven't watched all of it yet. But like Mary Tyler Moore show, I went back and I started watching that as well, and kind of like was trying to fill in the blanks of things I hadn't watched yet. Like I went back and watched some Columbo. I'm trying to think of some other classics that I went through. I remember I binged all of X-Files. I know I did that as well. Um, yeah, kind of those shows that are culturally relevant, but I hadn't really seen yet. I
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
blew through.
Wow.
Ted Lasso, obviously, but that wasn't a binge because that's when it came out.
Mm.
Was yeah, and then somehow ended up rewatching some of West Wing again because why
Yeah.
not?
Why not? Yes. I mean, I don't think so. There should be a reason of rewatching it. It's like, I'm gonna rewatch it. There should not be a reason at this point. But yeah, that's a lot. It's awesome that you had to watch so many shows, and I feel bad that I
Yeah.
didn't get to watch so many shows. Like, there's a lot of things that I just stopped watching. I'm like, why did I? I don't remember why I stopped watching. But if I
Oh
need
yeah,
to
yeah.
resume, I have to watch from the very beginning because I don't remember what happened. So it's just like
Right.
all of that is that's where I am right now. And I feel bad. Like
Yeah.
there's like 10 shows that I stopped watching midway. I don't know why, but I have to rewatch those. And it just sucks because I'm like, the time is not there. I need 48
Yeah.
hours in a day to make that work. Uh,
See, I'm the word person who like watches it while doing other things.
yeah.
Some like depending on the show.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna do that with Newsroom because I'm gonna be like, look down for 1 second, look back up, and you've missed like 3 scenes. Like, wait, what just happened? But
Yeah.
I kind of and sometimes I feel bad about it when I'm just like binging TV shows. And then I kind of remind myself that as a writer, it literally is research.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like I remember I was watching some TV show and a character said something. I misheard it and I thought they said something else. And I went, okay, but that something else is a good idea. And then I wrote a screenplay in 4 days. Like, so
Oh, that's so
like
cool.
it kind of, it is useful research, So
Absolutely.
yeah.
That's wonderful. But yes, with this game and especially with Suicide Squad and a lot of people who were interested in this game, for me, I love a good storytelling. I'm a sucker for dramatic moments. I just love
Oh
those.
yeah.
And it's everything dramatic is like just juice from me, and just like I'm able to feel that emotion. I'm able to, and that makes the story even better. And so for Poison Ivy, she's like
Yeah.
confused in some ways of what's happening, and like obviously the plants being kind of damaged and all that stuff. And there was a moment of like her completely breaking down at one point. So
Yes.
how was that like playing those moments? Like, what did you do to prepare for scenes like that, or in general about preparing for Poison Ivy?
Yeah. So in general, um, I'm not sure if I did anything specifically in general besides, having a slight familiarity. That was kind of part of the fun of this character was that she is a new version of Poison Ivy. So, and that's something that we address in the game as well, kind of people's expectations of her versus who she sees she is. Um, the dramatic stuff, yeah. So I think I know which scene you're talking about when spoiler, when they put the bomb in her head, and she's crying in the background. The funny thing is with that one, we had to re-record it about a couple years later.
Oh
um
shoot.
yeah, and I honestly actually still I can't really tell because I remember doing it, but watching it, it's still just as sad to me. I
Mhm.
can't tell which take they picked, but the reason we re-recorded it was because it was making them too sad. Like they're like, this is too devastating. Like the way you're doing it, we understand that they put a bomb in a child's head and it's just making us sad and depressed and uncomfortable. And I'm like, okay, so more snot, got it. And so we just tried to make it more fun. Just kind of like try to make it more funny. But it's still just sad when you watch it. So I honestly don't know which take they picked. But yeah, that was I don't think Amber had her moments of slightly psychoticness, but I think this character is the most unhinged that
Yeah.
or most unabashedly unhinged that I've played. So a lot of the stuff that I did was those crazy, time to die and just weirdness and craziness, which was just a lot of fun. And then they kind of surprised me with some things with like the audio logs in and where you kind of get a little glimpse of her inner world
Mm.
of these people expecting her to be Poison Ivy, the Gotham City siren, who's this femme fatale who, saves plants and all this stuff. And she's just a child.
Yeah.
And they keep putting these expectations on her and how unfair that is to this person who can't remember anything that came before.
Mhm.
And what I found fascinating was that some of the comments kind of reflected that, like when the game came out or when the character was announced, and some people were like, "Oh, but she's not sexy anymore. She's not our Poison Ivy." It's like you have
Of
no idea that
course.
you're literally kind of getting to the point of this character and her inner world. So it was kind of fascinating to see that reflected, the storylines that we recorded literally reflected in the public discourse.
I love seeing
Yeah.
those comments. People always come back to that. I'm like, that's great, guys. You got the point. So
Right.
lovely. But yeah, it's cool. I really like the different take on it. Maybe
Thank you.
not a lot of people like it. Maybe they don't like it, whatever it is. But I like the different take of it. Did you get? Did
So do
Yeah. Was there a challenge that you faced, like while working on this game? Was there the biggest challenge that you remember that you had to face for this project?
I. Yeah, well, there's two.
Oh,
Um, so the regular one is just the voice itself is extremely, it
yeah.
does I when I hear it back I'm like, oh, that just sounds normal, but it's a lot of work. And so 4 hour sessions of that and screaming, that is definitely a marathon. um but the thing that was like, not it was only an issue once, but I was doing a scene and the scene was opposite Harley Quinn, and they said, okay, just do it again, but this time less flirty, you're still 9. And I was like, but I'm opposite Tara Strong, like what do you
Yeah.
want from me? Like what did you expect me
Oh
to do?
man.
Yeah.
Wow, that must
Yeah.
be hard. Cannot imagine.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. It was horrible. I'm talking to Harley Quinn and I'm like, hey. Like, no, no, child. I'm like, oh, fine. Yeah.
Fine, we can
Yeah.
make another game and do a flirtiness over there. I
Oh, I
guess.
would say
Yeah.
yes in a heartbeat.
That's amazing. Did you ever get to play any video games yourself, or did you plan on maybe playing this game?
I don't have a system to play it yet. I'm probably gonna have to call one of my friends and be like, "Hey, man, can I come over and play the game?" But yeah, I played video games when I grew up. I had my little Nintendo, and I was like obsessed with Kirby.
Oh wow.
Um, Mario. I wasn't very good at Mario Brothers, but Kirby was like my jam. Um, yeah, but I'm kind of I think it's gonna be interesting to play the game and get yelled at by me
Yeah.
when I fail.
Oh man, yeah.
Then turn you into fertilizer. I think it'll be interesting to be yelled at myself.
Yeah, it would be something. But I feel like video games now have changed to a kind of direction, or like it just is
Right.
very different
Yeah.
as compared to where it was before. Like now, like it's more story driven. It's there are
Last
more.
of Us is an
Last
example
of
of
Us,
that too.
yeah, is a perfect
Yeah.
example, which turned into a show, which people.
Yeah.
It's so cool because now people get to know, like, oh, this show was actually based on a game, and some people then get the PlayStations and get to play the game,
Yeah.
experience it, and understand that video games are now also in that zone where you can actually just experience the story. Obviously, other
Yeah.
than that, you also have to play the game, but like it's the whole experience is it's amazing. So I love that fact, and that's what got me even more excited about games, and because I just want to experience these stories, and which makes me emotional most of the time. But like it's fun to experience all of this and these stories. So I'm happy that you get to be a part of this, these games, and I'm assuming that you would love to be part of more other games if you get
Oh,
the opportunity.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah, this isn't the first video game I've done, and it's
yeah.
not going to be the last. It's way too much fun.